dinner when you make it. Shopping, chopping, slicing, dicing, cooking, casseroling, spreading, shredding, boiling, broiling, basting, pacing, carving, starving, timing, brining, whipping, dipping, peeling, pouring, measuring, marinating. Or simply order a ready-to-cook, ready-to-heat, or ready-to-eat dinner on our Order Express app and be done with it. It's ShopRite's fresh-to-table food experience, and it's forever changing dinner. ShopRite, helping you get it together.
You're listening to the Jake Asman Show on the Sports Map Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
A lot happening with the NBA playoffs, so let's waste no time and go out to the Progressive guest line right now. We bring on a good friend of the show, the NBA insider for Bally Sports, Brandon Scoop B Robinson. You can follow Brandon on Twitter at Scoop B, and he joins us now. Brandon, appreciate the time, my friend. Thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Brandon, let's start with just the controversy in Boston a couple nights ago with the Celtics and the Nets, of course. Obviously, I think it goes without saying, the fan who threw the water bottle at Kyrie Irving should be, banned from ever being able to, go to another sporting event in my mind. I mean, I don't think it's a hot take to be on, that side of the argument here. But as far as the debate of whether or not Kyrie Irving stomping on the logo was disrespectful, I know a lot of people have gone back and forth on this. You spoke to Terrell Owens, who famously knows a thing or two about stepping all over a logo. What was that conversation with T.O. like?
Well, yeah, T.O. and I were texting a bit yesterday, and he just felt as though if he feels as though if they can boo, he has the right to step on the Celtics logo. And T.O. knows a thing or two about stepping on logos. He did that during his football career when he was a 49er. He ran on a Dallas Star, and it was good for Twitter. But ultimately, though, it comes down to just treating people the way you want to be treated. Some could argue that Kyrie incited it after Game 2 when the Nets played the Celtics, and when he talked about race, and some people felt that it didn't apply, but Boston does have an interesting history or dichotomy of history as it relates to sports figures and race and some of those other things. But, I think that the water bottle incident with Kyrie and him stomping on or smushing his foot on the logo, the Celtics logo, are mutually exclusive. And I think that ultimately they got the win. And I think, unfortunately, the win and how well Kevin Durant played, James Harden played, and Kyrie Irving played was overshadowed by the fan incident. I will tell you that there were some underlying things going on with the Nets themselves and why they were a bit heightened by what went on yesterday. I'll leave it at that. But what I'll say is, as it relates to just the fan, and he's arraigned this morning in Boston Municipal Court. And, it just comes down to just respect. And this is not the first incident that's happened, this week or in the past 7 days. You've had Russell Westbrook and the popcorn incident. You've had, the fan spitting on Trae Young. And ultimately, you also had some incidents in Utah where some fans had said some disrespectful things to Dylan Brooks' family as well as John Morant's family. So it's just a lot. And you had a fan running on the court last night in Washington, D.C. I think, post-COVID, people have been home. They're coming back to games. And it's a lot going on in this world right now. And I think that we got to get back to just focusing on basketball.
Brandon, are these incidents just isolated incidents, or do you think the NBA has a real, systematic problem here with fan engagement?
I've spoken to folks within team organizations, and they feel like it's going to happen again. There has to be some level of regulation of fans and, fans being prosecuted for certain things that happen. But I think that's hard because, you have team security or you have cops or folks, well, I say police officers who, whose job is to protect the players, but you're reactionary. You can't predict what a fan is going to do, and I think that's the difficult thing about it. You can protect players, but it's all reactionary based upon what a fan is going to do. So I think that's difficult, but I do think that the NBA will have to do something because I said 4 incidents, that's 5 incidents. Last night was 5. There has to be something that's done because the fans pay for tickets to go to a game, but that money paid to go on that money paid as a ticket is not a credential to get on the court.
Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, NBA insider at Bally Sports, with us here as we change gears now, Brandon, and talk about tonight's games. Of course, the biggest game, you could argue, of the season in the NBA could be tonight's Game 5 between the Lakers and the Suns. Looks like Anthony Davis is not going to play, Brandon, so is it a must-win for the Suns, knowing that if they don't win tonight, AD could be back for Game 6, and Game 6 would be in L.A.?
Yeah, the Suns got to win. But I also think you have to give some credit to the Suns because I think even without Anthony Davis and AD getting hurt, the Suns played a good basketball game. I always felt that this game was going to go 6 games. And I think that this game or this series has been exciting to watch because both teams have struggled with injuries in round 1. You know, I think that Chris Paul is came on at the right time the other day and got in this team, and he's the reason why the Suns are a huge reason why the Suns have played so well. So, in answer to your question, I think it's a must-win for both. But I do think that the Lakers, even without Anthony Davis, still do have some weapons. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope should play tonight. I think that when you look at just this Lakers team, Kyle Kuzma's going to have to step up. A big portion of their offense is missing in Anthony Davis, but I think you know that LeBron James is going to have to go berserk. I think you know that Andre Drummond is going to have to fill a void with AD gone, and I also think that Frank Vogel needs to utilize Marc Gasol a lot more because that's what you signed him for. Montrezl Harrell is going to have to step up big as well. But I also think that the Lakers are missing Dwight Howard and Rajon Rondo quite a bit. This team has a different identity because it was so built last year on fast break points and defensive prowess, both from Dwight Howard and from JaVale McGee, who's also not on the team this year. So I think that they're adjusting to a new system and have not had a lot of bodies to do it during the regular season, a very shortened regular season. So it's kind of rearing its head right now, missing AD and LeBron for a big amount of time. And I think now in the playoffs, they're just trying to get string wins together. LA is a better team. Injuries have just been a problem all season and unfortunately in the playoffs as well.
Brandon Scoop B. Robinson with us here talking NBA on the Jake Asman Show. Brandon, the Hawks now have a 3-1 series lead over the Knicks. Can I argue, though, Brandon, given the history of Atlanta sports, the Knicks might have the Hawks exactly where they want them now, 3-1?
I disagree. I think that this series is a bit different. They both had the same record in the regular season, but the Knicks were able to beat them 3 times in the regular season. I think it's a different animal now because I think defensively the Hawks got better throughout the course of the season. It's carried over to the playoffs. If you look at the last game, John Collins was in the mix and had his best game statistically. I think he had 20 points in the last game, and the game before that, Clint Capella played well. I think that the Hawks are coming of age at this point, and I think that the Hawks are just in a good position at this point. Trae Young is scoring points, but he's also getting his teammates involved. I also think Nick McMillan is just doing his thing as the interim head coach. Hopefully, they take that interim head coach tag off and name him, their head coach because he's earned the right to be their head coach. But I do think, Jake, that ultimately the Hawks do win this series because they've been consistent, and I think that I don't think Atlanta Hawks history or Atlanta sports history has anything to do with it. I think the Hawks have just been the better team in the series.
I agree. I was just messing around with you.
I know.
But as far as like the future of the Knicks here, Brandon, real quick, you look at Julius Randle. They obviously could pick up his third-year option. Has this series though been eye-opening in a sense that maybe you can't now sign Julius Randle to a max extension? Maybe you got to think long and hard about what the next moves are to try and build this Knicks roster up to get back from just being a playoff team to actually being a team that could legitimately contend for an NBA title.
Yeah, I definitely think that this season is attractive to not just Julius Randle staying, but future free agents in the offseason. The Knicks have the cap space. I think that the Knicks have proven that they're, at least this season, that they're out of the doldrums of being not a playoff team for a while, and people's perceptions of James Dolan may have shifted some. But I do think that Julius Randle, more than anything else, has earned the right to get some more money. I think Julius Randle, I've said this to folks, and I'll say it here, I believe that Julius Randle is who we thought Boogie Cousins was supposed to be.
I would take that.
As far as just his skill set as a player and more. And the most improved player of the year award is a formality, but I think it was a well-deserved one, particularly because of how he started his career in L.A. and got hurt and then found his way back. And I think that ultimately he's a piece that a lot of players want to play with. And the Knicks are missing a couple of things, namely a point guard, which you saw and why Derrick Rose ultimately started in the last two games against the Hawks. And they also need another star alongside Julius Randle and R.J. Barrett. The sky's the limit. They're young. I'd like to see them repeat. It's been great for New York City to have two teams in the playoffs. The Nets are the better team on paper, but that doesn't mean that they'll always be. The Knicks have a bright future, and I think that they should pick up the option of Julius Randle, and they need to add some more pieces to surround he and R.J. Barrett as well as head coach Tom Thibodeau.
Brandon Scoop B. Robinson with us here. Brandon, finally, looking at the Clippers, I mean, when they were down 0-2, they were rightfully getting destroyed, and it looked like that we were potentially looking at another playoff flameout for that team. They have since looked like a totally different team the last two nights, winning both games in Dallas. What's changed for the Clippers, and is it sustainable now going forward?
I think what's changed is Luka Doncic's injury. It's showing itself in the fact that he doesn't have Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps Porzingis is a complimentary player. He's not star number two, in my opinion. I think when you look at the Mavericks roster, I like Tim Hardaway Jr., and I think that he's played well this year, but you need a bona fide second star next to Luka. You also need a point guard, and I'd argue sometimes Jalen Brunson is number two. I think that the Mavericks are missing Seth Curry, who ultimately went to the Philadelphia 76ers. I think Luka's injury has changed the series, but it's not just Luka. I also think that Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, I think Paul George has been consistent all series. They just were losing. I think Kawhi Leonard has risen to the occasion and did what he needed to do. But I think that the Clippers need this victory because Montrezl Harrell left, Doc Rivers left, and if they lost this series, somebody was going to be, stopped by the cops holding the bag, and you want to make sure that that you're on the right side of history. And I think that I think that the Clippers, I felt that as though they were a potential NBA Finals representative in the Western Conference if they played their cards right, and I think that they're starting to right that ship. So I always thought that the Clippers would win this series. I just think they started off slow. And I think this is a wake-up call for them, and I think it's an adjustment period. And, if they win this round, which I think they will, they need to use that as a learning experience going into round two.
He's Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, NBA insider for Bally Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at Scoop B. Does a great job covering the NBA. Brandon, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk soon, my friend. Continued success.
Thank you, Jake. You as well.
Brandon Scoop B. Robinson with us there, talking all things NBA playoffs, Lakers and Suns, tonight's headliner game. Can the Lakers win without AD? We'll know tomorrow. We'll be breaking that down, I'm sure, as tomorrow's lead on the show. Quick break, and we wrap up the program for a Tuesday. Jake Asman with you. This is the Jake Asman Show here on SportsMap Radio.
Dinner when you make it. Shopping, chopping, slicing, dicing, cooking, casseroling, spreading, shredding, boiling, broiling, basting, pacing, carving, starving, timing, brining, whipping, dipping, peeling, pouring, measuring, marinating. Or simply order a ready-to-cook, ready-to-heat, or ready-to-eat dinner on our Order Express app and be done with it. It's ShopRite's fresh-to-table food experience, and it's forever changing dinner. ShopRite, helping you get it together.